Wednesday, May 23rd, 2019. And I'd like to welcome everyone, our huge audience. Thank you so much for coming back, John, and our media. Thanks for coming out. Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today. I would like to acknowledge that we are within the territory of the Sechelt First Nation. And if I may have a motion to adopt the agenda, it is an amended agenda from earlier today. We have the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee recommendations 5, 6, and 10 added in there under 4A or page 18A of that was sitting there on your table. So at your places. So moved and seconded. Any other additions to the agenda? Okay. Nothing else from staff? All right. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Agenda is adopted. May I have, next on our list is our minutes of our regular board meeting of May 9th, 2019. Annex A under pages 1 through 7. Are there any changes, errors, omissions, additions? See none, I'll ask for a motion to receive and adopt, please. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Was there any business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Nothing from staff? Nothing from the directors? We have no presentations or delegations today. But we've got some reports and some bylaws coming up. So I'm going to ask for a motion to receive all the reports first, and then we'll do each one of these committee recommendations block by block. So first, a motion to receive all the reports. And seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. So first off, our Planning and Community Development Committee recommendations, numbers 1 through 21 of May 9th, 2019, Annex B of your package. Directors, are there any of those that you would like to pull out before we adopt them as a group? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt those recommendations from the Planning and Community Development Committee. So moved. Seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next on our docket is Annex C, the Infrastructure Services Committee recommendations, numbers 1 through 11 of last week, May 16th, 2019. Directors, would you like to pull any of those out? Director Ties.
I'd like to pull out recommendation number 1, please.
Okay. Recommendation number 1. Director Hiltz.
I think at number 2, I think I'm trying to pull out. I thought we were opting out. That's why I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll pull that one out
Okay.
and we'll discuss it separately. Okay. Directors, any other of those recommendations you would like to pull out? Okay, seeing none, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the recommendations numbers 3 through 11 of our May 16th Infrastructure Services Committee. So moved. Seconded. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. So you're going to make an amendment to the block. So you're going to pull out number 3 and reinsert number 2. Look at how I follow. Directors, board, do you have any questions on that? Is everyone?
2, 4, and up.
So 2, 4, and up. 2 and 4 through 11. Okay, so we've made that amendment and seconded. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, on the amendment to the first, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so the amended is to adopt numbers 2 and then 4 through 11. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Did I get that, Angie? Woo! Okay. All right, so first we're going to go over to Director Ties regarding recommendation number 1. Director Ties, you have the floor on that, please.
Yes, so for recommendation number one, I just wanted to reopen the discussion on bin size, and I think that after some conversations I've had with some folks, I think I would like to actually go with the bin size that Gibson's is currently using, and the reasons are that one, it works for Gibson's, and so why shouldn't we do that? Secondly, why should we let the people in Area E know that they actually don't live in Gibson's? We want to keep them in the dark on that, and thirdly, the smaller bin size continues to incentivize the people to actually do their own at-home composting when they have larger quantities. When you put in the bigger bin, then people will be tempted to actually throw more away. And I do want to continue to incentivize people to do at-home composting. So I think that's another one. And my concern initially was that the larger bins would have a more secure mechanism to close the lid with wildlife issues and things like that. But it doesn't sound like Gibson's has really any documented issues about the way that their lids close and how that wildlife's getting into there. So I think the proof is in the pudding. So I think the smaller bins is what I'd like to propose.
Okay. Director Kroll, I see that you had your arm going there.
It wasn't so much, I'm just in full agreement with Director Ties. I think just the size of those other bins was encouraging people to throw more away and think small, reduce it. So a good move. And they're easy to handle. And, we haven't had any significant animal issues. And the other thing is if it's done in coordination with the app, you get the thing out in a timely manner so they're not sitting out on the street overnight. It all works.
Director Seekers?
Two questions. Question and comment, I guess. Through you to staff, do all the areas have to have the same size bins?
Over to staff.
I can see that's not a requirement we need to put in the request for proposals, but I think it will be very cost effective to have so.
Okay, so then a comment. This is something that's going to be coming to Seashell Council over the next short while. And as you know, we've got that short 6-month pilot going in Davis Bay.
6 years now?
Something like that. 5 years, maybe. And some of the feedback from that is that because the organics will also take soiled materials, like paper soiled materials. So if you start with pizza boxes, for example, and you've got a small bin, very quickly you fill up your bin. So that's a conversation that we're going to be looking at and dealing with. Just throwing it out there.
Director Hiltz?
Thanks, Jerry. I'm going to weigh in with sticking with where we were. It was, and the pizza box is going through Gibson's on Tuesday on top of the bin out in the curb was pizza boxes because it was too big to fit inside the bin. So, and for me, it gives a little bit of flexibility in the future of including the household plants and type of things. So we might be able to change what goes into the collection, and that wouldn't be. So that's kind of where I was going, and it was a staff recommendation. So I was happy with the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Director McMahon? Keeping in mind we don't actually have a motion on this on the floor, we're just discussing it at this point.
Yeah, I'm not married to it either way. I mean, I like the idea of diluting Area E residents into thinking they're living in the town so that they can send all their complaints over there. But I don't really know what all the considerations are. I have not had to use these, and I feel awkward making this decision, frankly. It's kind of a picky decision. So that I kind of felt that we should go with staff's recommendation, but the smaller ones might be cheaper. If we did go with the smaller ones, presumably people could buy a larger one from the hardware store and use that instead. Would that be an option?
Over to staff.
I think it will be difficult for our contractor, because I think from a contractor purpose, it's useful for them to know what they're able to pick up, also in terms of weight.
Director Kroll.
Not that it happens that often, but occasionally when we've had pizza boxes, we just flatten the pizza box down best you can, set the compost bin on top of it at the curb, and the collectors take it all. So trying to stuff it into the container, I don't think really needs to be a major consideration. Your stuff is collected every week. Unless you have pizza every night, shouldn't be that big an issue.
A question for GM Rosenboom. What was the smaller size? How many liters was it for the Gibson? Oh, sorry.
23 liters is currently used at Gibson's.
Okay.
It's a 5-gallon bucket size.
Director Kroll?
Just one last consideration. Fill the Gibson size bucket with compost, and it's reasonably heavy. I would have concern for a worker, because it's manual pickup, lifting one of those larger containers if it was full. Like I can see, eventually from the collectors getting some sort of pushback, because I think they'd be ludicrously heavy.
Okay, I'll weigh in as well, because I'm personally not happy with going with the larger size. I would prefer the smaller size. And part of it is a visual, or it's a mindset piece of if you have a larger bucket, you're going to fill up a larger bucket. The worker side of it as well, thank you for bringing that up, Director Kroll, because it does get significantly heavy. At home right now, we use a 5-gallon bucket. It takes us about 2 to 3 weeks to fill it up. So personally, I would prefer going with the smaller size. Director Ties, I'm going to put it back to you, because you've wanted to discuss this. Would you actually have a motion how would you like to change this recommendation? Because we're sitting here discussing it without a motion on the floor.
Okay, well, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I'm going to make a motion that we amend it to the 23-liter size option. So that the recommendation number 1 reads that includes a bin of approximately 23 liters without wheels, but it does have a locking mechanism.
Okay, and to confirm, there's no locking mechanism. No, it's a flat. It's just does the lid the land.
Has a clip. Has a clip.
The handle locks it. Okay.
It's correct that the handle in upright position provides a lock, but it's not a manual lock like on the medium-sized one.
Okay. So for clarity on that. And then also, just to confirm, it's area B, D, E, and F that are voting on this. Okay? So, Director Ties has made a motion. I do not have a seconder on this yet. I'd look for a seconder. Okay, it's been seconded by Director McMahon. Director McMahon.
Can I just, I believe the smaller ones were cheaper. Was there a significant cost difference if you look at rolling it out over 5,600 households, I think? So.
Over to, yeah.
There are several dollars difference. There's there's a small difference, yes.
And Director Hiltz.
I'm just going to go back to staff and going, why was option B selected as the staff recommendation imposed? It's kind of like Goldilocks, a little bit too small, a little bit too big, and the middle was, seems to be just right. So I'm just wondering, was it a Goldilocks principle, or was there something more than that?
It's a fair question. Over to GM Rosenboom.
The middle one, thank you for the question. The middle one was included and recommended by staff, in part because it has the wheels. So people who have difficulties with a longer driveway and not able to carry it all the way, they can at least roll it to the bin. And especially in rural areas, the driveways can be longer. The locking mechanism also allows it to easily put in the back of a truck without the risk that the lid comes off and food waste is actually in the cab or in the truck. So we thought it would be friendly in use for a lot of the people. We staff recognized that it could have the perception of that a lot of organic material should be produced because it needs to be filled up. But if you compare the 40-liter size with the big containers, it's still small enough to encourage an appropriate use of the bin, and it allows for things like pizza boxes indeed to be included in a reasonable manner.
Director Hiltz, did you? No, I think. Okay. I'm going to look to any of the other directors if they have any more comments to this motion that's on the floor that Director Ties has put forward. Any other? I understand. That's, like I said, I got quoted in the paper as saying compromise sucks, but honestly, it's there's so many people in the rural areas that do already compost. Personally, I think it's too big of a bin because it's bigger than what we use in our family. It's much, much bigger than what we go through. And my kids, they go through a lot of fruit and stuff, so we have a lot of peelings, we have a lot of organics and food waste that ends up going in our recycling, or in our, yes, Director Ties.
My last comment is going to be, well, it works in Gibson's. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay, and Director Hiltz?
Well, when we were at the local government open house, District of Sechelt, their proposal is a 100-liter green waste bin. So too big, too small. So, and I think there is a little bit of difference. The town of Gibson's is definitely more of an urban environment, and we are dealing with more of a rural environment. Perhaps the green waste site in Gibson's is a little bit more, the proximity is closer to the people of the town of Gibson's versus, I'm thinking, West Howe Sound, it's 6 kilometers away, so this might incentivize people to actually use the
You can't put green waste in it. It's
household,
just for
yeah.
household food waste.
At this point in time,
Yes.
yes. So.
Director McMahon?
Okay, we've got to put this one to bed, but yes. Yeah, despite those urban deer that are roaming the streets of Gibson's, I think it is a more urban area, so I would be inclined to go with staff's recommendation.
So, Director Kroll, did you have a final word before I call the question on this?
Well, urban or rural, house sizes and occupancies are about the same, whether you've got a 20-foot driveway or a 300-foot driveway. The occupancy level of a house and the output of organics, regardless of whether it's urban or rural, tends to be the same.
Well, in the urban versus rural conversation, I can say, we've had a grizzly bear open a garbage can at Shottleach Secondary School, so it's, which is not, that's pretty urban right there. it is borderline, but I mean, there's a lot of neighborhood out there. We live very close to the wilderness here, so I mean, I grew up on 160 acres out in the middle of nowhere, Alberta, so it's, to me, we're pretty urban, so, but we'll call the question on this. So Director Ties' proposal, the motion that's on the floor, is to include the bin of approximately 23 liters, which is the smaller size. So we've had that moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And my vote is for. And those against? So it's defeated because it's a tie vote. Okay? So, okay. So then we're going to go back to recommendation number 1 that we have, the original recommendation that's on the floor, and or it is not on the floor, sorry. And I'm going to ask the directors if one of you would like to move this recommendation number 1 that's on the floor. Or, no, we're on we're going back to number 1. Yeah. And moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this recommendation? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? And opposed? I'll put it as opposed. And I want it recorded. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to go on to recommendation number 3. Director Hiltz, you had asked to have this one pulled out. Please go ahead and take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My recollection is that we voted for not to have an opt-out consideration, and I'm not sure if that captures that in here.
We'll go over to staff and then Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. The board the recommendation as included in the report was, as it is listed here, is that the report was received and not that and there was no recommendation made on implementing any opt-out program itself. So that's why this is just for the receiving of the report. Thank you.
Okay, Director Hiltz, a follow-up?
So, and unless we're going to have an opt-out, we're not opting out. So that's okay. I think I'm clear on that. Thank you.
All right, Director Ties. It's all good? Okay. So would you like to, you're comfortable moving the recommendation at this time? Okay, so Director Hiltz is moving recommendation number 3. Is seconder. Any further discussion on this recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. So I turned my mic off. All right, next item on our agenda is 4A, the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee recommendations 5, 6, and 10 of May 23rd, 2019 of earlier today. So, directors, would any of you like to pull out any of these recommendations, or shall we move them as a block? Any recommendations you'd like to pull out to discuss further? Okay, so the block of recommendations has been moved by Director Seegers, seconded Director McMahon. Any further conversation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, Annex D, our Chief Administrative Officer's report. So over to Ms. Legault, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. I just wanted to comment that the AVICC meeting on active transportation infrastructure was cancelled at the last minute because of an availability issue for one of the project leads. But other than that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, over to directors. Any questions for our interim CAO on her report? Yes, Director Seegers.
Okay, so NAOSH week. When do we anticipate that video that we're all going to be pilloried in is going to be coming out?
We will be certain to let you know as soon as it's been edited together.
Great. Director McMahon.
I just want to say that I think that the tours of the water treatment plant went well, and I'd really like to thank staff for helping us organize another tour for high school students that I think is coming up.
Director Hiltz?
Sure. It's on page 20 about the water public engagement. Are we releasing dates of that yet? Has that been hit the? Is it public yet? The dates.
Go ahead.
Because of the timing of when everything came together, our advertising this week is simply hold the dates without any specific location or times attached to them, but we will certainly be working to get that information out on multiple channels very shortly.
Director Hiltz, follow-up?
So the follow-up dates are hold June 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Okay, thank you.
Terrific. So hold June 3rd, 4th, and 5th for the water engagements. Any other questions or comments from the board? Yes, Director Hiltz.
I'm going to ask about the tree planting ceremony. Local Government Week has passed, or did we plant a tree?
Thank you. So we're currently in the middle of Local Government Awareness Week. It is all of this week. And the Local Government Management Association, in recognition of their 100th anniversary, offered a financial contribution for us to acquire a tree, which we have and have planted in the beautiful young dogwood tree, flowering white dogwood in the front here. And we had a photo op with the chair and a shovel.
And I know the District of Sechelt planted something as well, so that's great. Yeah, so that's a great initiative. Anything else? Looking to my directors? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for the report. I know it's been a very busy time for you all. Okay. All right, so we don't have any communications, we don't have any motions, but we have bylaws. And so we've got a few bylaws we've got on here. So the first one we have is Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 310.184, 2018, and that's going to be coming up for second reading today. It's on Annex E of your package, pages 21 to 23, and the electoral area directors will be voting only on this one, and that's one vote each. So may I have a motion from Director McMahon to read Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 310.184, 2018 for second reading. So moved and seconded. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. So that's second reading.
Just a point
Yes.
then, this is second reading. This is the short-term rental bylaw, which will be coming up for public hearing on the 18th.
Yes, it's the 18th of, is it the 18th of June or 16th of June? I can't. GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. I believe it's June 18th.
It is June 18th? Excellent. I'm chairing that one, and you're alternate chair, so that'll be fun. Okay, thank you. And then the next, this is Sunshine Coast Regional District Electoral Area Zoning Amendment Bylaw. So Annex F, pages 24 to 26 in your package, and this is for second reading. So may I have a motion for second reading of Sunshine Coast Regional District Electoral Area A Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 337.118, 2018. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, next up on our list, number 8 on your agenda, Annex G in your package, pages 27 to 28. And this is for second reading of the Roberts Creek OCP. So may I ask for a motion for second reading of the Roberts Creek Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 641.10, 2018. So moved and seconded. Electoral area directors, one vote each on this, please. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Next bylaw is the Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Amendment. This is Annex H of your package, pages 29 to 30. And this is electoral area directors again, 1 vote each. So may I have a motion for second reading of the Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Amendment number 310.179, 2018. Ask for a motion, please. So moved and seconded. Seconded. Okay, electoral area directors only. All those in favor? Motion carries. Terrific. So we're through our bylaws, and we're moving on to our directors' reports. Does anybody want to jump in to start us off? Okay, Director Seegers.
I have a list.
Oh.
There's a conversation going on in the community regarding drug users and how we keep them safe, so harm reduction kind of focus. There's more work coming forward in the next while. One of the things that we're looking to see how to facilitate is having a spectrometer, I believe it's called, coming over from the Lower Mainland so people can actually test the drugs. A lot of conversation going on around that. You'll be seeing something come forward in the next while. E-bike meetings. We had, during this active transportation month, on the 2 Saturdays, previous Saturdays here, we had e-bike meetings. We'd have up to 5 different models of bikes, and we'd have up to a dozen people at a time. They were coming and trying out the bikes. Some of them were talking about they're doing holidays over in Europe, and so they're renting a barge and an e-bike. So they go on the barge and go down the river and get off on their e-bike and tour around the country. So it was a lot of fun. Met some people, elderly people who are doing like 50, 60 kilometers a day on their bikes up and down the coast and having a blast. Skippy AGM. So the Community Forest had their AGM and gave an extraordinary dividend to the District of Sechelt. So it was well received, and there will be money going back to the community again as well with regards to the Legacy Fund. We've started a conversation with the farmers market. Their lease comes up next year, so we're looking, where do they go? Do they stay where they are? We've gotten a lot of the people who are impacted, including residents up the hill who are impacted by not being able to exit very well, at the table. So it'll be a bigger conversation for down the road. We had our cannabis public hearing, cannabis bylaw public hearing. And during that public hearing, some more information was actually brought forward so that we actually gave it back to staff. There's more work to be done before it comes back. It will require another public hearing. Ooh, somebody's flying over. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for coming to the intergovernmental meeting. It was great, a great turnout, good conversation, and we're moving some things forward. We did do our tree dedication. We had speeches too. Whatever. Mayoral bike off. It's in the paper today. So I had an advantage. Mayor Beamish and I got on bikes yesterday. Press were there. We had some other people watching. Yes, I did have an advantage because I had an e-bike and he didn't. And yes, I won. That's okay. My staff was happy. They said I had to win. I attended the cedar ceremony yesterday. Director Kroll was there as well. So the community forest actually harvested a cedar tree as per the requirements for the Sechelt Nation, and the tree was blessed yesterday. It will become the totem pole representing reconciliation. So it's open to the community. Once they actually start the carving, they're requesting the community come and be involved, and get in there and carve some of it so that it becomes a community totem pole representing reconciliation between our peoples. Upcoming popsicle stick bridge building contest this weekend. It's always fun. They spend all this time building these popsicle stick bridges, and then they get to break them. Pride kickoff beginning of June. I think Gibson's will be putting up a flag. We'll be putting up a flag. There are a number of events. Something else that's happening is the Lieutenant Governor for BC is coming for a visit, and we'll be attending a number of different events the first weekend in June. I believe there's something happening in Gibson's, something happening in Sechelt. She'll be around in the community. Fastball is coming back to Hackett Park. The new screening, the big, whatever, cages, backstops, that's what it is. They're being put up right now. Wednesday the 5th is going to be when they have their first game, starting at 6 p.m., and I get to do the ball toss. Also upcoming, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver is having a lunch for the real estate agents on the coast. This will be with the mayor and chairs and our planners. So I'll be coming up on Thursday the 7th, I believe it is? 6th? Yes, right, 6th. And then, District of Sechelt, we brought forward some proposed bylaws. One is around signs, one is a good neighbor bylaw, the other one is tree management bylaw. So those came up yesterday, and they'll be going out to the public for input. That's it.
Okay, and then for Active Transportation Month, have you been logging how many
I
kilometers?
have been. Eat my dust, McMahon. Sent an email out last night. So I said, I'm so far behind her that the dust has settled by the time I get there. So I'm dustless Darnelda, but I have now, I'm at 50 kilometers riding and 46 kilometers walking this month.
Fantastic. Congratulations. That's great. Okay. Any of the other directors like to jump in next? Director Kroll.
Just to follow up on what Director Seegers was saying, Director Lee was also at the blessing yesterday. And the significant thing of this totem is it's on the site of the old residential school. And I remember when I first came to the community, it was sort of this ghostly building standing there across from the hospital. So I think it's particularly significant that this site has been chosen for the totem. And I gather from the speeches that were given that the whole site has been sort of redesigned and replanned to sort of focus on the totem. So it's a really very poignant addition to the community.
And anything else you'd like to report on for Gibson's officially?
And this is more a Mayor Beamish thing. He's been getting a lot of mileage on the Cape Town Challenge. We launched a project in the lobby of the town hall where, examples of water meters are there. We have a tank with 50 liters of water, which is part of the Cape Town Challenge. Limit your water consumption to 50 liters a day. On our website, we've got tables like dishes, laundry, a shower, how much each of those use. So you can sort of keep a mental track. We put out little shower timers, and they've vanished. And people are saying, hey, I really can do a shower in under 3 minutes. So it's... And then this Sunday is the Cape Town Challenge Day in Gibson's, and people are just being asked to try and use 50 liters, see what sort of, just become aware of it. And it's part of the whole education process in moving forward and dealing with a priceless resource that, we need to be mindful of.
Thank you, Director Kroll. And have you been keeping track of how many kilometers you've been active transporting?
I've been walking. When I worked in my past job, I used to average about 17 to 20 some odd kilometers a day walking, just in the building, up and down stairs. And it was a city block, whole city block, 8 stories. So you did a lot of walking. I will admit that with this change in lifestyle, I've put on 2 kilos, which is really bad. but I am walking more. I'm probably doing about 5 kilometers a day, which is way less than normal. But I've been consciously trying, if I have to go down to the post office, I walk and try and make it into a little tourist thing through the lower village and talk to merchants and stuff. So, I don't think, and I think certain people that have really gone overboard, they're going to be hard to beat.
Yes, they are. Donna. Okay. Thank you very much, Director Kroll. Who else? Director Lee. This is so funny. This is going directly by my list when you guys are just, reading my mind today. So, Director Lee, what's going on in Vancouver Harbor?
I got my notes all made here. We had the PODS public hearing that Director Pratt chaired, and I'd like to thank her. She did a great job. Can't really talk about details, I guess, but I was the timekeeper, and I was afraid I was very inept. By the end of it, I finally got to push the right buttons. I was at the Cedar ceremony, and it was very poignant to find that they are planning on building on the site of the old residential building. I drove by that when I was a kid, and I didn't know what was going on there. It's only recent history I figured it out. We should be teaching those kind of things in school, and hopefully we'll get on with it. It's a new totem pole. It's going to be over 30 feet tall when it's done. They were very welcoming there, but I found they have a great sense of humor as well. They had to throw in we got a new tradition. We're going to have Timbits now. Had them at coffee. It was fun. Gary Feschuk was there, and he spoke. He was very well spoken. It's nice to see that he's recovering a little from his stroke. And I've been walking. I walked to the mailbox. Of course, it's about 20 feet from the bottom of my driveway. Still impressive, Anyways, that's it. Thanks.
Any comment on May Day?
Didn't make it.
Okay.
Busy writing an article.
Okay. That will be seen in next month's Harbor Spiel.
Yeah, apparently Poppy was there, and she was quite popular, and some of her compatriots were there to make sure she got in the water.
They were actually handing out popsicles to everybody that was gathered around, especially after she was done her stint in there. So, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Director Lee. Who's next on the volunteer list? Fantastic. Director Ties.
I finally got the tour of the water treatment center that I missed the first time around when the board got to go, and I'd like to say a big thank you to Cody Abbott and Raf Shea for a fantastic tour of the water treatment center. Some of the stats that blew me away was the 29 metric tons of coagulant that we use every 6 weeks, and the 18 metric tons of soda ash that we use on a monthly basis. So if that's not an incentive for conservation, I don't know what is. And that was it was really neat to see all that, and the enthusiasm that Cody and Raf display is great, and I think they should be commended for that. And I think they're scheduling more tours, and there's wait lists for that now. So I really encourage anybody that can to get in touch with them and get on that wait list. One of the big facts that came out of the information this year is that we're about 1 month ahead of where we were last year in terms of our water reserves. So let's make sure we conserve. So that's a big one. And then we had the intergovernmental meeting. I was kind of hoping that we would declare a coast-wide state of climate emergency, but some people were not willing to call it an emergency or find a way to commit to all that. So I've been kind of pondering as to if we don't want to call it an emergency, what else we might be able to call it. And then I came to think of threat to life as we know it crisis, or maybe the accelerating slide into the apocalypse situation. So, or a beeping climate calamity. So, if an emergency isn't what we're facing, then what is it? And on that note, I was talking with my wife, and she was actually in a women's or moms group where students, where they're basically the moms were trying to support their student kids into climate change and what they could do. And one of the ladies there was a counselor that actually works at the schools. And the kids in high school right now aren't worried about what college they're going to get into, or they're not seeing their counselor because they have relationship issues or whatever it might be. They're actually wondering what's the point of getting a post-secondary education, because the world's going to end. So that's their concern right now, and it's pretty poignant. And some kids are showing up there and saying, "I only have 15 more years to live," that kind of thing, and they're really worried, and they're worried for their future. They're worried for this planet's future, and so I'm just. I just want to make sure that we have that urgency in everything that we do. So tomorrow I'm actually going to go to the climate walkout that the high school students are planning from 12:30 to 1:30 in Davis Bay. And I'm going to make sure that I'm there. I'm not sure if anybody else would be interested in coming. And then yesterday, thank you for, I believe it was the District of Sechelt that put together the ALC presentation. Is that right? Yeah, so thanks for hosting that. And I really enjoyed the interesting thoughts on cannabis that were presented there, and the two differing viewpoints. And then the last thing was I was contacted by, where is it now? One sec. By Luke Menike from the BC Council for International Cooperation, and they are having a meetup at the Botanical Gardens this Saturday. It's about is it BC 2030? Yeah, it's about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and how local communities can actually be part of it. So if anybody's interested in being part of that, it's an open invitation to all the directors. So if you want to be there, let me know. It's at 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Sunshine Coast Botanical Garden on Saturday. And you have to pre-register, so I can send you the invite if you wish.
Great. That would be great to circulate around, Director Ties.
Okay.
And thank you for bringing up the climate walkout that'll be happening tomorrow. I think I can make it down too, and it'd be helpful, I know, to maybe have a few extra adults there, but also as elected folk to stand and talk to the kids and walk through and find out what we can do. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to make a quick note around the intergovernmental meeting, why we didn't actually make a motion. It's because it's not actually a decision-making body. It's an information-sharing body. So we can't actually, it's not part of our mandate to, we don't have the structure for that.
Granted, I was just looking for a little bit more support than what I got.
You got a lot of support from your students there.
That was
pretty incredible.
Which was very, very, very promising. And, it gives me hope when I see people like that stand up and do their...
Well, and it's great to actually have them sitting at decision-making tables so that they can remind us of what what our responsibilities are as the elected people to them as upcoming, as current citizens of our community, yet not voting ones. So, Director Kroll, you wanted to say a quick something?
I just wanted to comment because I think the significant thing that came out of the intergovernmental meeting was what was being seen through the eyes of tomorrow, the youth that did speak. Both the Gibson's students on council were there, and Nick. Yeah, so
Student
I think,
trustee.
there was a lot of discussion, but they just cut right through it, right to the meat of the matter, and, hey guys, do something about it. So there's no beating around the bush with them. The youthful enthusiasm it's delightful to deal with. And it's a wake-up call. Like, how many more studies and surveys do we need? Do something about it.
And with that, student trustee Davis he called us out. He's like, you're the decision makers, make a decision, make things change. So, Director Tighe, how's your active transportation challenge going?
My active transportation challenge is going dismally. Unfortunately, I've got some health issues that I'm dealing with. So I've walked my daughter to the bus every day. That's about a kilometer round trip, but I've had to curtail my biking enthusiasm, and since I don't live anywhere where I can walk to, unfortunately, I've been relegated back to the car.
It is an e-car, though.
It is an electric car.
Yes. Okay, so I've got a few more directors on the list. Who'd like to go next? Director McMahon. Seriously, this is my list. They're following it precisely.
I'm glad we are following your psychic instructions. It's kind of scary, actually.
It really is.
So just to get to the other thing first, assuming I survive my ride home today, I will be at 230 kilometers by bike and 95 by bus. I composed my director's report on the way here this morning, so I suppose it's musings on the active transportation thing. The worst thing about cycling to the SCRD is the unnatural hour that I have to arise in the morning to accommodate it. And when I get out on the road, the normally tranquil landscape of the Sunshine Coast is infested with morning people. In places where I can normally go about my business unmolested, they practically pop out of the bushes with, "Hi, what a beautiful morning. Look at my cute Rottweilers. They're really very friendly." At least the very large black bear that ambled across the road in front of me this morning was dignified and majestic and quiet. It didn't gambol about in a frenzy of diurnal ecstasy. I appreciate that people aren't responsible for this tragic chronic condition, but I do hope that medical science is researching a cure.
Anything else going on in Elphinstone? Okay, so ditto then. No, but thank you for doing that with panache. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to look to the other side of the table because, and now we're out of order, but Director Hiltz.
I'm sorry for being out of order. I will do my best. Intergovernmental meeting, thanks to the District of Sechelt and the Islands Trust people. We're particularly pleased with being on a list that they have not been on a list before, so thank you very much for including Islands Trust as the government agency. We went to a webinar at the town of Gibsons, and it was called Creating a Blue Dialogue, which was I found really interesting as it was about watershed co-management and the activities that are going on throughout the province. And it's really remarkable how many groups in local governments are working on government-to-government agreements, and there's just so much work. And they put together a handbook on how to do watershed governance. So there's a good model for us to follow. And there was one of the phrases that came out was your home watershed. I never really thought about that. Like, where does your water come from? So an awareness of what your home watershed is. And we were going, well, Chapman or Gibsons or Soames or Langdale. So, it was an interesting thing to think about the watersheds in which we walk upon. So just think about where is your home watershed. That was an interesting comment. What else should I say? Active transportation. I shuttled 6 elected officials. So I was a bus driver for a good shuttle. Rode the bus this week, which was another interesting experience, having to deal with the bus schedule, and the SCRD isn't a particularly easy place to get to, but Seashelt is. Seashelt is on the map. And continue to ride the bike, and I think I'll stop there. Did I get all your questions?
I think so. Do you have a kilometer count or estimate? Or?
More than 1 and less than 100.
Excellent. So Director McMahon is still winning. Okay. Okay. Next up.
Only thing out of the difference from all the rest of the folks here is I had a tour of the Water Resource Center in Seashelt. And anyways, I was part of the committee that selected that facility or complex to be built. And so it was pretty interesting to see it working, and it's nice we've got a great staff there that's very interested in seeing it come to, to fulfill the ideas that we thought it might. So it's nice to see it at least getting started, to be back on track to where it should be going. And one of the other things is the capacity of the way that the center is set up. It's set up for 4,000 cubic meters a day, and right now it's running around 21 to 2,200 cubic meters. So there's lots of room for expansion at this moment. And active transportation, I'm walking as much as I sort of can. So I'm along right in there with Director Hiltz there in my mileage count, under 100. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just add a couple of things in. Well, we last met on May 9th, and then that afternoon attended the School District 46 Bursary Donor Tea. They do that as a thank you. From there, I headed off to a Soyuz, so I won't count that as carpooling because it was just me and my daughter. So that unfortunately would have, but we'll just knock that one out. Was so happy with the intergovernmental meeting, with the attendance. It was some good discussion, and it was a good first meeting for this group. So looking forward to the next meeting. Have been on have had some of my constituents take me on a boat tour of the Secret Cove area. The open house at the Seaside Center earlier this week for Local Government Week was it was great. I wish we would have had more residents there, but I was so happy with the doing that jointly with the District of Seashelt, and just hands up to our staff and District of Seashelt staff for being there, being so well prepared. And it was nice as directors to get in there and talk and find out a little bit more, dig into a few things. So that was great. The ALC yesterday at the Seaside Center, that was the Agricultural Land Commission. That thank you to the District of Seashelt for reaching out to them. That was pretty informative, and they've made quite a few changes that haven't filtered through all of the people that need to know yet. But that second, not being able to have a second residence without going through the application process on ALR land that was a big one. And as a realtor, that was one I hadn't even heard of yet, and was able to pass through some of my, and bring up again, I think, when we do the June 6th report to them. As is been reported earlier today in the Coast Reporter, I spent some time in the water on on May Day. It was a great event in Pender Harbor, and good to be a part of that. And one thing that occurred to me as I was looking at the dunk tank is it's about a meter by a meter by a meter. So there's your cubic meter, and that was half of that for the Cape Town. Well, no, less than half. No, less, because that's it's crazy. When you look at what a cubic meter actually looks like, except after a few other people have been through it and dumped some of the water out. I'm so looking forward to July 1st when you get to do it as well. Yeah, 1,000 liters. It's incredible. Like when you see that, and it's 50 is a lot less. For some reason, my brain did not. It's too warm in here, and my brain is not doing the math properly. But that's an interesting visual that might be at some point we might be able to use to illustrate what it actually looks like. So, other than that, I was just going to say thanks to I'm feeling like 6.5 months in, I'm putting my foot in my mouth a lot, and that's one of the places I am. I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that. And dunk tanks as well, so there you go. And interesting quotes in the newspaper, and there you go. So with that, that's all of our director's reports for today. We have no new business. Oh, sorry, Director McMahon.
I just wanted to follow up on Director Hiltz's, we attended the watershed webinar, thank you. This came up again, that apparently some of the jurisdictions were able to use gas tax funding for their watershed management planning. And, I don't know, maybe rules have changed or something, but I do think we should at least look at that to see if it might be an option somehow.
Okay, Director Seegers?
Yeah, that was brought forward by Mayor Beamish. So our Chief Financial Officer actually looked into that, and UBCM has a couple of categories, 2 or 3 categories that could potentially be used for that. He said there would be an adjudication process on the other end, but most likely it would be approved. Regional growth strategies were also on the list.
Any comment from staff on that, or that's the first you've... Okay. It's interesting. We'll see what comes out of the other. Oh, and then I will report on my active transportation, because otherwise Sophie will ask about it after. Carpooling lots. Last week I got dropped off for a meeting, fully intended to use the bus, and then ended up carpooling back to Sechelt with another elected official who I don't usually get a chance to talk to. So, I'm going to FCM, so the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, next week. I'll be using probably getting dropped off by my daughter because she needs to use my car, but from there I'm going to be on foot or bus the whole time, and trying to stay away from using taxis or anything, and just figuring out Quebec City's transportation system. And so I'll be happy to report back on that when we get back in June, and tell you how I got lost. If I make it back, so who knows. We lost Director Pratt. Anyways, so we have no new business. We do have an in-camera session, so I'd like to ask for a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91A, C, I, and K of the Community Charter, personal information about identifiable individual, labor relations, and other employee relations, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Questions? I'm going to go first to John. Any questions from the public for anything that we've discussed, or comments?